All right, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to dive straight into a pretty chilling paranormal case file. This one involves three college friends, a very old hotel, and, honestly, a fatal sense of curiosity. So if you're someone who loves dissecting architectural mysteries or urban legends, you are absolutely in for a fascinating ride today.
But let me ask you a question before we really get into it. Have you ever noticed that hotels almost always skip the 13th floor? You know, you're standing in an elevator looking at the panel and the numbers jump from 12 straight to 14. It's a remarkably common architectural superstition all around the world. But what would you actually do if you encountered a hotel that didn't just skip the 13th floor, but actively hit it? Would you leave well enough alone, or would you give in to that deeply human instinct to just investigate the forbidden?
Section 1, the Grand Royal Legend. So our source material introduces us to these three college friends, Alex, Ben, and Chris. And for years, they had been hearing all these weird rumors about a place called the Grand Royal Hotel, situated right out at the edge of their city. Now, everyone knew this was a 13-story building, but if you walked into the elevator, the panel looked totally normal for a superstitious hotel. It just skips straight from 11 to 12 and then, boom, directly to 14.
Okay, so 13. That is the forbidden number at the very center of this case file. It's the number that absolutely should not exist anywhere in the architecture of the Grand Royal. But the friends, being naturally curious, decided to push the issue. They literally went up and asked the hotel manager about this missing floor, totally expecting some boring, simple explanation about building codes or, quirky superstition.
But instead, the manager grew visibly nervous. He looked them dead in the eye and firmly stated, "There is no 13th floor." It was just so abrupt. It wasn't a factual statement. It was a warning, a very firm warning that, of course, the boys decided to completely ignore.
Moving into section 2, the hidden elevator button. Because late that night, the three friends decided to sneak back in and do some investigating of their own. At exactly 2 a.m., they step into the elevator. They're kind of looking around when Alex spots something that is incredibly easy to miss. It's this tiny, completely unlabeled, hidden button tucked away right behind the emergency panel. And without even thinking about the consequences, he just reaches out and presses it. The doors close, the lights start flickering, and the elevator begins moving upward past 12. Then, this loud metallic sound echoes through the cabin as the digital display ticks over to 13, a number that supposedly didn't exist. The elevator groans to a halt. The doors slowly part, and the atmosphere, it just instantly shifts. The air out there was freezing cold. The walls looked incredibly old and heavily damaged. Now keep in mind, the hotel right below them was totally modern and spotless, but up here, it looked as though the entire floor had just been abandoned to decay for decades. Chris actually whispered that something wasn't right, but their profound curiosity just kind of dragged them out of the elevator anyway. Section 3, room 1313. Walking down this long, pitch-black hallway, they start noticing that every single door is closed tight. And every door is numbered, starting with 13. So you have 1301, 1302, 1303, stretching all the way down the corridor. And in the dead silence of that freezing hallway, they suddenly hear a sound that absolutely does not belong there. It's a child laughing. Just a small, innocent laugh, echoing directly from room 1313. And they just freeze right in their tracks. Suddenly, the laughter abruptly stops. And then, a sound comes from the inside of the room. Knock, knock, knock. Just 3 slow, deliberate strikes on the wood. It honestly builds this incredible subconscious unease. Ben slowly reaches out for the handle, but before he can even turn it, the door just drifts open completely all by itself. Inside, the room is completely empty. There are no windows, no furniture at all. Just a small wooden chair sitting right smack in the center. And resting on that chair is an old photograph. So Alex walks in and picks it up. The photo shows dozens of hotel guests standing together, smiling at the camera. But someone had violently scratched out every single face in the picture. Every single face, except for one little girl, standing way in the very back. And the absolute second Alex touches that photo, bang. The door slams shut behind them, the lights instantly go out, absolute pitch-black darkness just swallows the room. And from that blackness, a voice whispers right into their ears, "Why did you come here?" The boys completely panic and throw themselves at the door, but it's locked tight, and the whisper just grows louder, saying, "Nobody leaves." Suddenly, across the pitch-black room, this pale girl appears. Long black hair is completely covering her face, and then her head tilts unnaturally to the side with this sickening crack. The literal sound of snapping bones fills the room as she advances, taking one slow step forward, then another, and then another. And at this point, the friends are absolutely screaming. Section 4, the escape. Right as the girl closes in on them, the door finally bursts open. The friends rush out into the hallway, but it's completely wrong now. The hallway is suddenly endless. There's no elevator anywhere, there's no exit at all, just an infinite stretch of darkness. And then, the doors lining the hall begin opening all by themselves, just one after another. Inside every single room stood motionless people. Men, women, children, all just staring silently, unblinking, completely unmoving. Their eyes are just tracking the friends as they run. Chris stops dead in his tracks and points. Way down at the end of this endless hallway stood the little girl, just waiting and smiling. And then, every single silent person standing inside those rooms steps out into the hall. Slowly, they all start walking toward the boys, hundreds of footsteps echoing through the corridor. The friends turn in absolute sheer panic and just run blindly through the dark as fast as their legs can possibly carry them. Miraculously, the elevator just materializes out of the dark. The doors are wide open and they dive inside. Alex is frantically mashing the lobby button, but nothing is happening. Outside, the pale girl is getting closer, closer, closer. Right before she reaches the threshold, the doors finally slam shut. But then, the entire elevator drops violently, like it's in a complete freefall. The overhead lights actually explode, raining sparks everywhere. They brace for impact, totally sure they're dead, until suddenly, ding! The doors slide open quietly, and they are perfectly safe, right back in the bright, modern hotel lobby. Section 5, the tragic truth. So they're back in the lobby, and the hotel manager sees them stumble out of those elevator doors. His face literally drains of all color. Looking completely horrified, he just whispers to them, "How did you get there?" The boys are shaken, and they just spill everything that just happened. And that is when the manager finally reveals the dark, deeply buried secret of the Grand Royal. 40 years ago, a massive fire ripped right through the Grand Royal, completely destroying the 13th floor. More than 80 people died in that horrific blaze, and among those tragic casualties was a little girl. And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying scope of this curse. 40 years ago, the fire claims the 13th floor. A week ago, our three friends unknowingly step right into that preserved nightmare. The manager tells them the grim reality of it all. Since that fire, absolutely anyone who managed to somehow reach that floor never returned. Ever. Which brings us to Section 6, the endless nightmare. Now, hearing this horrific history, the friends actually start laughing nervously. Because after all, they were standing right there in the lobby. They had beaten the curse. They survived the impossible. But as we see in the source material, surviving the 13th floor was really only the beginning of something much, much worse. The aftermath of this was swift and just brutal. Exactly 1 week later, Ben disappears. 2 days after that, Chris vanishes. There was zero evidence left behind. There were absolutely no clues for the police to follow. Just nothing. They were gone, leaving Alex completely alone to face whatever consequences were coming. And then we get to this terrifying recurring number, 313. One night, Alex wakes up in his own bedroom, totally alone. He looks over at the clock, and it's exactly 3:13 a.m. And through the dead silence of his apartment, he hears a sound coming from his bedroom door. Knock. 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 His heart completely stops. And from the other side of the door, inside his own home, this chillingly familiar voice whispers, "Welcome back to the 13th floor." The nightmare hadn't stayed at the hotel. It had followed him all the way home. So the crucial point here is that Alex never opens that door. He just stays frozen in his bed. But the source material leaves us with this truly terrifying reality. The knocking continues every single night. And even more unsettling than that, according to his neighbors, the knocking persists to this very day.
Which brings us to our final slide, and a question I really want to leave you with today. We've structured this entire explainer around the very real consequences of curiosity. So I have to ask, if you woke up at exactly 3:13 a.m. to the sound of 3 slow knocks on your bedroom door, would you be brave enough to check the hallway? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your curiosity sharp, but maybe think twice before investigating the forbidden. I'll see you next time.